Making the decision on who to sell to was tricky. And then the technical nature of an actual contract, extremely tricky. And we made a mistake in that we had a willing buyer, willing seller, and we said, let's just use like one lawyer. There's so much literature on how to start a business, how to scale up a business, how to run a business, how to exit a business. But then post-exit is so little. And the more I speak to post-exited founders, the more I realize it wasn't unique only to me.
The goal with Exit Strategy is to create an educational platform that helps business owners and founders develop skills that will help them get their businesses sold.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Exit Strategy Secrets, the first one of 2025. I've been on a bit of an extended holiday in Sri Lanka, just enjoying the downtime and getting ready to kick off an amazing 2025. And today we have Kim Whitaker as our first guest for the year. Kim and I met almost 12 years ago, where she was the owner of Once in Cape Town, a hospitality business, and she hosted our students who came from America, and we've built a great relationship since then. And I've been watching Kim's journey. She subsequently exited Once in Cape Town a few years ago, and we're just very excited to have you on the show.
Erin, thank you so much. It's lovely to reconnect. And in fact, I feel like our journey started before that, because I'm pretty sure I roped you into a consumer workshop when I was just busy building ones. So, you were very much part of my startup journey.
Yes, I actually remember that. We almost called it Chakalaka, I think.
Or YOLO, or, there were a host of things that, thank goodness, we didn't call it that.
No, Once in Cape Town was a very good choice. So, Kim, thank you for joining us. I think just to start off, it would be great to get a bit of your background, share your story in entrepreneurship and how you kind of got to where you are today.
Thank you so much. I think officially my entrepreneurial journey started at 23 when I started my first business in Cape Town. It was a backpackers hostel that I started off the back of a few years of traveling and just loving the sense of travel and the person that I became when I was backpacking. That opportunity to connect with young people and to explore the world. So I came back after a few years abroad and studying at university, and I decided to launch my very first business, which was called 33 South, and kind of had a few other businesses. I had a student business where at one stage I was renting out like 7 to 5 rooms in observatory, and I dabbled in the nonprofit space as well. And that eventually led me to starting Once in Cape Town in 2013. So I've had a few businesses, a few exits along the way, and excited to share and hopefully add some more value today to your amazing podcast.
Thanks, Kim. That is quite a journey. Yeah? Hospitality is definitely not the easiest industry to get into. With Once in Cape Town, which I think we'll kind of dive specifically into, what were some of your early challenges that you faced in the business that you had to overcome?
I think that one of the first things that most founders will say is funding, because that is one of the first things that seems out of one's control. So in terms of working hard, putting in the effort, strategizing, building models, building business plans, connecting with people, I had a large element of control. Funding was completely out of my control. So I felt like that was really one of the first little obstacles to overcome. We eventually ended up finding an investor, a private investor from Cape Town, who became one of our shareholders. And he is an incredible man. And him and his wife have 5 kids. And they said they own a hotel in Cape Town, or they owned a hotel in Cape Town. And they said, we'd love to build a concept that our kids would love, because luxury hotels are amazing, but really does an 18-year-old want to hang out there? And so our mood boards and the idea of a place that took the infrastructure of a hotel but the heart of a hostel really resonated with them. So that was our first hurdle. I'd say the second one was branding. So, and maybe tied into that was my first experience with sort of shareholder not conflict, but more like robust discussions, because I was the last to join the team, and the team had decided to all the business clock in. And I really didn't resonate with the name. I felt that it reminded me of going to work, and it had it was just problematic in many ways, like spelling mistakes being one of them. And and so that was another hurdle, was to try and convince the team. And as I mentioned earlier, we did a little brainstorm with a bunch of travelers, yourself included, and we ended up not calling it Chakalaka or YOLO, but we ended up calling it Once in Cape Town, which is the beginning of a story, right? Like once upon a time. I think apart from turning the business around, so we ended up sort of acquiring the lease on a very old sort of building, and we turned it around. We 4x revenue within a year. We took the occupancy from like the low 50s to mid, sort of around 82%. And apart from that struggle, which was actually wonderful, I'd say one of the less spoken about challenges is being a woman, and I'll just say it. Often I would show up at a trade show with myself and our general manager, and people would address him as if he's the owner of the business and I'm like the marketing chick, or perhaps they find out that I was the owner. They'd be like, "Oh, that's amazing! Like, do you own it with your husband?" I'm like, "No, I don't own it with my husband." So I think that that was something that never like deterred me, but it was a little bit of a milestone, running a much bigger business, and being surprised, I'd say, that that people's perceptions were still so backward.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with a few female business owners, and it's a general trend where, there's this kind of like stigmatism around female owners. And I'm, really happy to have you on the show, because the majority of our guests have been males. And so it's really nice to balance it out. So I just want to go a step backwards to, you mentioned when you talked about Once in Cape Town, we found investors. Who were your original partners, and how did you structure the original sort of shareholding?
When we first started out, there were, let me think, there were four original founders, and it was an idea. They had expertise in finance, they had expertise in business, and they had expertise in property development. What they were looking for was an operator, a jockey. And so that's where I came in. I was very active in the backpacking community. I was on a number of tourism boards at the time that focused on youth travel. And so they sought me out as a potential partner, as a person with operating experience. How we structured the original deal was pretty much two partners were silent, so they each had 5% share. That was like, from the onset. And then three of us were directors, and then the last shareholder was our business partner. And so that was how it was originally structured. Over time, we had some people exit, and we acquired their shares, and we restructured that a little bit. But that's we sort of said, here's the pie. There are five of us. Okay, well, let's just divide it in five, and then give a little bit less here, a little bit more here. It wasn't very particularly. No.
Yeah, no, that's actually the reason I asked the question, is because I find, like, when you building a business in the beginning, who you bring in, who you partner with, how those shares are divided can have quite a big impact on, the path of the business and its eventual exit. So, I was just curious, did you discuss with your partners the roadmap? Was there a map to exit, or was it more around, we have this concept, let's build this idea and we'll kind of figure it out later?
So I would say that within the first month of operating, we realized, oh goodness, there are a lot of conversations we should have had. Going into it, I had an incredible mentor who was very familiar with the property game. And he said to me, Kim, you've got to take risks. You can fall down, but don't take a risk that big that you can get like paralyzed. So he helped me structure the deal in that we had a Texas auction clause, which was always super valuable. Texas auction clause essentially allowed any shareholder who came up with an offer, the other shareholders could match that offer and had the right to purchase. It meant that if there was ever a discussion around acquiring, you had to kind of put your money where your mouth was. And that was that single clause that I had no idea what it meant at the time. He gave me two pieces of advice. He was like, Texas auction clause and know your financials. Don't get an accountant. He said, be in your numbers every week. Check your bank account every week.
Wait, let's stop. Let's stop there. So those are two very important pieces of advice because I've never heard of the Texas Hold'em clause before. So let's just dive into that a little bit. Can you just explain that in as much detail as possible?
So let's say, for example, you have a simple organizational structure, two partners, 50-50 each. Okay. And under many jurisdictions, you can't force anyone's hand when it's 50-50 unless there's a special clause. So the Texas auction clause allows for, I would say, like deeper thought and integrity when making an offer. So let's say you and I are business partners, and I say, look, Aaron, actually, I want to buy your shares. Maybe I've got someone waiting in the wings who's wanting to invest, and you and I aren't getting on great. I don't know what the context is. Or you want to go, move or do something else. And I say, look, I will give you $1 million for your shares. But actually the share value is more like 2.5 million. Then you'll say, okay, I'm going to enact this Texas auction clause. I now have the right to buy your shares at $1 million. Right?
Okay.
So I can't undervalue the shares because then you have not really even first right of refusal. You have the right to buy my shares at that price. So it means that anytime we would engage in a conversation that was around buying each other out, it had to be an honorable offer.
Mm.
Yeah.
That is incredibly useful, and I've never heard of that, and I will actually think about adding that in any deal that I do because it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it might be worded differently in different jurisdictions, but that's how.
It shows you the value, especially if there are younger people listening to this podcast that are starting a business, of having a mentor, someone who's, been through the process of raising capital, had partners, sold their company, that can sort of give you like nuggets of advice like you got that can have material impact to how the business rolls out in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll come back to that because I have another mentor, and hopefully later on I'll share another little nugget that would have been great to know earlier.
Okay, so the second piece of advice he gave you was just look at your numbers. And the reason I'm also going to kind of talk a little bit about that is because, I was an engineer, studied engineering, very financial orientated actually when I worked on Wall Street. But then when I started my business, I became like very creative and innovative, and I stopped like caring about the numbers and focused on brand and doing cool stuff. And it actually did come back to bite me because I often didn't understand, how much money we had in the bank and where it was all going and what we were doing. I just sort of assumed that if we spend money, we'll make money. And looking back, if I had to change how I operated as a CEO, it would have been that I would have paid much more attention to the numbers and worked much, much closer with the CFO on like analyzing the real metrics every week in and out as like a habit and a discipline.
100%. So I will share that I had an incredible mentor in our investor. So as I mentioned, within the first 30 days of opening this big 50-room property on like central Cape Town, we realized very quickly that myself and our investor had the actual expertise of running hotels and backpackers, and we were the ones who were going to be running the business. So within very short time, all the rest of the shareholders became silent partners. And in our investor, we had, his name's Johan Nel. He's an incredibly dynamic entrepreneur. And we were like black and white, yin and yang. Like if I was marketing and brand and experience and connection, he was like finance, structure, organization, discipline. If I was like, yes, 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 he was like, no, wait. And it was fantastic to have that level of, we understood each other on a very deep, connected level. So we could have like extremely robust conversations, and he could challenge me and I could challenge him back. And he understood the high level financial situation very well. And so I was able to, like, every week sit with him and learn, okay, what does it mean, the balance sheet? Like, what is, why can't we write off this, this big improvement we've made in the back area? Why can't we take that off our tax? So he explained, like, really over some time, every week we'd sit together and he'd kind of explain the high level stuff. What I was very good at was the metrics, where he also had a huge role to play because he had this other hotel. What is our occupancy? What are our ratings? What are our reviews like? Because if the reviews are good, the occupancy will go up. And if the occupancy goes up, well, we have to keep the rates strong, because if your rooms are cheap, of course the occupancy will go up. But the trick is to have strong rates and high occupancy. So we measured the metrics every single week. And then, of course, just like staying on top of, has everyone paid? So my weekly sort of metric was, how many accounts are outstanding? And then I would follow those accounts and make sure that they get paid weekly, so that we had a strong cash flow. And from day one in that business, we had a very strong cash flow, which was eventually, years later, what saw us through COVID was just like, and for those of you who know me, I mean, you know me sort of socially as well, like I'm not a very structured, disciplined person. I rather resonate with like adventure, freedom. Those are my values. But financial discipline is critical.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm working on that. So that's really good information for business owners. Business owners that I've been working with, are generally creative and entrepreneurial, not everyone, and generally don't have like a very good grasp of the numbers. And that's usually the first place to get stuck into and fully understand if you want to prepare to have a good exit. So that's interesting. So Kim, so you brought on this investor. Sorry, go ahead.
Just a quick
Go ahead.
thought. When I heard this, it resonated so much with me, right? So there are a few roles that the founder or CEO cannot delegate or abdicate, right? And one of those is setting the vision for the company and resource allocation. Now, I think that most entrepreneurs are pretty good at saying, this is my vision for the future, right? This is where we're going to be in a year from now. This is where we're going to be in 5 years from now. Like, they're mostly enthusiastic visionaries who know what the future holds. So let's call the future B. Where we are today is A. And knowing exactly where we are today and then building a little yellow brick road to where we're going to be at B is the founder or the CEO's first and primary role. And it comes with a lot of things like, culture and resources. But if we do not know where we are today, financially, brand value, risk-wise, then how do we know if we're moving in the right direction towards B? And so the discipline is about knowing, today I'm at A. Like today, this is our cash conversion cycle. This is how much revenue we have per customer, et cetera, so that you can plan, especially if there's an exit and shareholder value, how to get to B.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you now, I think there's many different types of businesses, that might want to exit. There's high growth companies where they plan to exit, but then there's like another layer of business where they've been around for 30, 40 years, and they didn't really have a plan. There was no real vision. It's like we're offering a service and this is what we do. We don't have this grand vision of where we're going. And when I engage with people like that, I say to them, look, if you want to sell your business, you have to have a plan of what do you want to sell your business for? There should be a number in your head. And then at least then you can say, well, I need to grow my revenue this amount. I need to improve my margins. I need to generate this much profit, because in our industry and this type of game we play, this is how somebody will value this company. And then you work towards that picture, and that becomes your roadmap for 6 months to 12 months to set the business up for a good exit.
Absolutely. And I think Pablo Fatides, I heard a quote the other day that 97% of South African businesses do not sell, which is way higher. And, like 97% of all facts are made up. So I don't actually remember the actual number, but it's a high percentage in South African like businesses that don't sell, right? And globally, I think only about 20% of businesses end up exiting. And even if your ambition is to exit to save like the staff's welfare or to keep the brand going or whatever, it might not even be wholly financial. Exiting is something that I find extremely worthwhile considering.
Yeah, no, I think, South African stats are definitely, in terms of how many businesses don't exit, are much higher than the global standards. And well, I don't know about all countries, but relative to the US. And most of the reason for that is that there are less buyers. There's less money in the system to acquire businesses. And also, the South African investors, private equity, strategic buyers, are generally more risk adverse. So if you want to sell your company, it has to be a pretty good company if someone wants to buy it, So there's different kind of philosophies and mentalities around the capital structures in South Africa. And a big part of, the exit strategy project is to help business owners prepare their companies so they can have that liquidity event, so that they can get freedom from the companies that they've been building, over all this time.
100%. I'll be a bit contrarian, and I'll say that is also a story we tell ourselves as South Africans. Yes, but if I look at the GDP of our country, and if I look at industries, like there is cash in South Africa. I would love to know the number of people who try and sell their business and are unsuccessful, because I have a hypothesis that many don't even try. And it may
that's a very good point.
And I think that in South Africa, one of the leadership qualities that we admire them like often, and this is my observation, is humility. And I think that it often is a contrast, like, can I be humble and sell my business, put my neck out, right? And so there's something that I'm curious there around, because I've seen, like when my parents, they're doctors, my dad was like, I'm closing my surgery. I said, Dad, sell your business. He's like, what? I said, just sell it. Like, let's work on an evaluation. You just sell it. And then he sold it. Like he was about
No,
to
so that is such a good point. I think business owners, they don't really think about selling their business. The business is a lifestyle business. They're kind of under the assumption that no one's going to buy it. What's the point? It's a printing business. Who's going to buy this? But in reality, there could be a bigger printing company that wants to expand the geographical reach, and they'd pay a decent amount to have your geographical location, and just like you say, if you don't go out there and try to sell your company, obviously it's not going to happen. So I think there is that intentionality about, what is your exit strategy actually, and do you have it in place? And if you put it in place with a business that generates profit, that generates revenue, there is a high chance you can sell that. It's an asset that makes money.
100%. And there are other lifestyle business owners who are sick of corporate and would love to start a little printing business. And they've saved up. So like my observation through exiting is that I had a very narrow view of value before I exited my business. And then I started thinking about my business from multiple perspectives and seeing that my perception of value is just one of very many. And if I could extract as much value across all these different viewpoints, the chances of my exit would be much higher.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is also a good point, is that like value maximization strategy, because let's say you're selling your business on a multiple of your profit, and let's say your profit is R1,000,000, and something so simple like a buyer coming in and say, I'll pay 3x your profit, that's 3 million Rand, versus saying, I'll pay 4x, that's an additional R1,000,000 that you could earn selling your business just by increasing the perceived value in the market, either through the value of your brand or, showing a better narrative to a buyer, etc. So there's a lot of ways that you can really position your business for a higher value exit if it's well planned.
So I'll share a story, an anecdote that shifted my perspective on selling. I was at a talk and it was delivered by Zachariah George, who is like a very influential VC sort of fund manager here in Cape Town. And he shared a story of a township brand in South Africa. And the story he told was of a beauty brand, right? And their offering was that you could pay a monthly subscription of like, let's say, $7 or $8 or 120 Rand, whatever. And you got a box. And in that box, they had like end of life beauty products. So maybe Revlon made a few thousand to extra, or L'Oreal made 6,000 extra, something. So you'd get these beauty products on the subscription. That business was bought for $12 million a few years ago. So that's 12 million Rand, sorry, which is at the time was $1 million. And its net profit was nothing. Like they were not making a profit. And the reason why it was purchased for that much was because they were able to decipher people's addresses. And so they were able to design a delivery method to get these little boxes into the township. And the company was bought by a local subscription TV company. And basically, the boxes business was shut down. But they had access to thousands of people. They knew now where they lived, and they had their addresses. So they could, send them their TV bills. They could promote, digital subscriptions. It was the address list alone that was worth that much. No revenue, like a zero multiple. And that talk just shifted my perspective on where does an acquirer see value in the business.
That's a good point. And sometimes it's not super obvious, where you don't actually realize what the key value drivers within your company would be to a strategic buyer. And a strategic buyer would be different to, say, a financial buyer of your business who's just looking at the finances versus someone who's looking at the strategic value that they can acquire through the acquisition. So yeah, I mean, I am a bit wary of time, so I'd love to jump into your exit and actually get into the details, because that's the crux of this podcast, is really understanding. So, let's talk about when you decided you wanted to sell once in Cape Town. What was that moment, and why did you decide that?
I made the decision to exit once quite a while before I exited. So in 2018 and 2019, I did an executive MBA. And the course was incredibly holistic, had like a lot of reflection and meditation. And through that journey, I really was able to decipher that I was not living to my full potential, and that this current situation was like I wasn't 100% content. So I had opened my heart to it, like I hadn't made any sort of decisions yet. We got an offer December 2019, and it was enough to kind of raise my eyebrow and go, okay, that's interesting. I literally just had a thought, and now we get an offer. Fast forward a few months, obviously, COVID happened, and even before that, I had decided to take my foot off and just like pull back from expansion. Thank goodness, it was like a gut reflex even before COVID came around. And during COVID, I launched a tech platform called Ubuntu Beds. We connected healthcare workers in empty hotels and apartments and B&Bs. We got loads of funding. We were able to accommodate over 4,000 healthcare workers. We built a team of 47, mostly volunteers, people from all around the world, coming together to build this incredible platform. And I felt so alive. I felt so connected and alive and in flow. And then I just knew that, okay, I don't feel like this in my business anymore. It's the worst time to sell a hotel brand. I'm wary of that. It's like the middle of COVID. But we had made a lot of good financial decisions. The business was in a strong position. And again, I just kind of opened my mind and my heart to this eventuality that I will no longer be involved with once, and that I'm going to start exploring other things. Boom, we got an offer, right? And then within a very short time, we got another offer.
Wait, did you go to market? Sorry, I wanted to say, did you go to market or did they just? Oh, that's super interesting. Okay.
Didn't go to market, didn't share it with anyone. Didn't I was just journaling and reflecting for myself. But literally, I think that sometimes when you rewire your mind, sometimes you manifest things without sounding too spiritual. Yeah, exactly. And I just realized the time is right for me. Also, my the investor that I spoke about earlier, he was also up for a change, and so we started pursuing these deals. And I realized there are two leverage points that I have in this whole situation. The first is negotiation power, and the second is knowledge. So I dove deep into those kind of key levers, and I feel that I did really well in the negotiation, and I did not do that well in the knowledge. And in hindsight, I wish I had taken on more professional expertise earlier on the knowledge side. Yeah.
Okay, that's super interesting. So now you had two offers and you're considering them. What was the process that happened next? I mean, you had to come up with a value. That's usually the first thing. Then you have to discuss, what kind of terms, go through due diligence, like what actually unfolded post you saying, okay, well, these are super interesting. Like, what do I do now?
So I'll speak first to negotiation. I had the benefit of a super shitty experience during COVID where I was bullied by a fully grown man. And in order to figure that situation out, I had gotten the help of an incredible Harvard trained negotiation coach. And she was badass. She took me under her wing. She coached me. And so with negotiation, I felt extremely confident. And I realized, okay, one deal is no deal. Two is nice. Three is great. So I started working towards having 3 deals on the table, 3 offers. And within a very short amount of time, probably 6 weeks, and just through picking up the phone and conversations, we had 3 letters of intent. Prior to COVID, years before that, there were a few things that led me to prepare mentally and also financially and business-wise for a sale. First of all, I have been in Forum for many years in EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and my Forum had gone through multiple deep dives on exiting, and a number of my Forum mates had exited their business. So I had seen firsthand their process. Second, I am such a fan of accelerators and business think tanks, and we had participated in a number of these get financially ready business startup sort of concepts, and a lot of the I had learned along the way around about a data room. So the data room was ready. It was done. It was updated monthly. All our governance had been in order since day one. Taxes were sorted. There was nothing. There were no skeletons in the closet. So governance-wise, financially-wise, we were ready, which is a huge advantage. It took me a long time to get all that ready, but I was not under pressure. So every new business I start will have a data room from day one. Like, just with all the documents neatly saved, so that when people come knocking, I'm like, sure, let's chat. So that's the pre-work. Step one was NDAs, non-disclosures, because I hadn't gone to market and I was not that keen to let I didn't want our staff to find out. I didn't want our suppliers to find out. I didn't even know if it was going to happen. It was COVID. It's not a great time to sell a hotel business. So NDAs was the first step. Then we got some letters of intent. The terms were so bad, I didn't even read to the end. I just laughed. I said, like, look, we're financially still in the positive through COVID. We're not desperate, like, no. So there was a bit of back and forth. I think possible acquirers were just testing the water, like, how desperate are they? And I was not desperate, or we were not desperate. Then we started just having meetings, setting up calls, going through some questions. We allowed them access to the data room, which was all done through Google Drive. So I could see exactly, like, when did someone click where. I'd set up the security so they couldn't take a screenshot, they couldn't download, and anything to do with marketing, we kept completely out of the data room. All our suppliers, all our big contracts, etc. The next step then was for me to negotiate up. So I had realized quite quickly, being 2021, the brand and the operations were like way less valuable than the lease. The lease that we had, which was a long-term lease, triple net, on a property in central Cape Town, was the most valuable asset that all these businesses were after. So I thought, well, if I can extend the lease by 10, 20 years, that would increase.
That's really smart. Wow. Clever.
I went straight to our landlords, with whom we had an exceptionally good relationship, and I said, look, we are interested in extending, for a number of years. And they were accommodating and obliging, and within 2 weeks, we had, I think, an extra 10 or 20 years with options on our lease, which suddenly increased the value by a few million. So when I say negotiating, 3 was my goal. Like, I found out very quickly what's the value, how do I increase the value, and then it was a back and forth. Then it was okay, what does this one want? What's the most favorable offer? Going back to our shareholders, discussing everything, and then finally narrowing it down and making a choice on who would be the best fit, both from the employee, we had a bunch of tenants. So that process, that from beginning to end, it took 6 months.
So I just want to dive deeper into negotiation, because it seems like, you're saying that was one of your strengths, and also that you were kind of coached by someone, with a specific skill set. Maybe you can dive a little bit into some of the principles that you applied, and, just some of the situations in which your negotiation skill set may have helped you get additional value or get into a better position when negotiating the terms. Because as far as I'm aware, it plays such a big role in the exit process. You've got a term sheet, you've got another party, you've got to find a middle ground in what the value is, willing buyer, willing seller, and that is a negotiation. And so understanding it from your perspective would be very helpful.
So we never had any hesitation from any of the buyers. They never sort of threatened to back out. And I think it was because from day one, I said, I'm giving you access to this data room, but you don't have exclusive rights. So that was my first tactic, is like, I'm dating, we're dating a few sellers, a few potential buyers, and the mandate's not exclusive. that might have been exclusive for like 2 weeks, but it was, we were very exploratory and very open. So anytime that there was a new potential buyer, I would update the other interested parties and just say, look, just so you know, we have another interested party and da 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 da. When it comes to negotiation, I feel that people, or certainly I underestimated how it works. I thought, okay, cool, you have one glass of water. The buyer wants to buy it for as like low as possible. The seller wants to sell it for as high as possible. And it's just about battling back and forth to see where we end up, right? Value versus price. And what I learned about negotiation is that the other option is just to increase the size of the glass of water, is just to increase the pie, right? So the first step was to learn exactly, like, what are they after? Where do they see value? What is their goal? How do they want to grow the business, change the business, transform the business? What do I want out of it? And how do we get both of those? So it's not about like an either or, it's about expanding the pie. And it's about really bringing more depth and opportunity to the table. So I think that was my big learning. The second was just figuring out what's going to be best for all stakeholders. So we could sense, this buyer would be amazing. Like, we really resonate with their brand, with their culture. But then this buyer has got a personal connection. So maybe, it would be nice to favor this one because, they went to university together with one of our other founders. So that became more of a challenge, was navigating the softer stuff, right? Once we had 2 or 3 deals on the table that we were equally happy with, and then finally deciding who do we go with. And that is where I wish I had more knowledge. So I was extremely confident with the negotiation, and I got it to a point. Making the decision on who to sell to was tricky. And in that instance, and then the technical nature of an actual contract, an extremely tricky. And we made a mistake in that we had a willing buyer, willing seller, and we said, let's just use like one lawyer, we don't want to sort of spend time, we don't want to waste money and stuff on a third party. Let's just use one lawyer. And it seemed like a really good idea until the day after the sale. And then we realized that wasn't a very good idea.
Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so you got a term sheet. You agreed to the buyer. Were there any specific terms? Like, how did you agree on value, and how did you was there like was there an earn-out strategy, or how did the actual transfer happen?
So as I mentioned, the value for the buyers at the time was in the lease. And so my expertise were and the brand and the stuff that I held dear was actually negligible, in the greater scheme of things. Where they really found value was the lease. And so my involvement was not necessary. And that suited me great because actually I was interested into moving more into the tech space. I was interested in stepping away from the physical nature of hospitality. So I said, well, I want a cash deal or no deal. So in terms of terms, I was extremely clear on that. There was no earn-out. There was no, and also it was the tail end of COVID. So an earn-out, we had no idea what was going to happen. We'd done business for 8 years and it was consistent, but after COVID, who knew? So there was no earn-out, it was a cash deal, and there was a transfer date. On this day, the deal happens, we get paid, the shares get exchanged, and everyone goes their separate ways. It was a very clean deal.
And going back and reflecting on the actual deal and the terms and the contract, if you could go back and change, anything, what would you change?
Okay, so the one thing I would change was launch ChatGPT earlier. I literally ran the contract through it and it told me straight away, like, look for this, you idiot.
It's amazing how it's true.
So now, like it's simple. If if you're like me and you use ChatGPT for everything, including like what should I wear to the Pixies concert, I would, I would literally, just I would run the contract through ChatGPT and say, are there any clauses or phrases that I should be concerned about or aware about as the seller? And then when I phrased it like that, it pointed out all these things. So if I could change anything, and I have to think that this was a genuine mistake, right? Like obviously I've made peace with my exit and I'm happy. It was a misunderstanding that was not made clear to us before. Now, the first thing is if you share a lawyer, it sounded amazing. I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Like Creany's lawyer's fees. It's like a few $100,000 or a few tens, thousands of dollars. That sounds amazing. Who is paying for the lawyer? Because that is who the lawyer is serving. Actually, even if it's on paper, like, we have a joint lawyer, like the person who's paying the fees, the lawyer is in service of that person. So, okay, I would get my own legal representation. And subsequently, I found amazing lawyers who are great. And then in this instance, it was one word. It was one word in the entire contract that changed the material nature of the contract.
I guess you're 100% right. You should always have your own lawyer. Whoever pays for the lawyer works for them. I mean, generally speaking, if two parties are negotiating, the two lawyers are actually negotiating with each other to try and get their client the best terms, right? So, yeah, I think for someone who's considering exiting, get an M&A lawyer who has experience, who understands terminology in business sale, has done over 50 sales, and really that can make the difference in a few million rand, I guess, in the end of the day when you're selling your business, right?
To be fair, for peace of mind, I paid 10,000 Rand for like another law firm to read through it. And I was like, is there anything I need to be aware of as a seller? And they didn't pick it up. So there's no guarantee it would have picked it up because you need to have an extremely experienced tax lawyer know the difference. And, at the end of the day, in their mind, it was completely rational and normal. And in my mind, I didn't understand why one would take the accounting principle of a 50 million Rand business or more, like, for example, a bank, and apply it to a small business. But it's not, it's not untoward or whatever. It's just, you could say the business is valued according to the accounting principles of Finland, if you wanted to value business that way. It's a subjective thing. Sorry, anyway, yeah. We make peace that, and sorry to learning there is, yeah, it's just, just I did not have the knowledge and expertise to know that. And going back to mentors, I have an amazing mentor in my uncle, and he said to me, Kim, the contract looks great. Just ask about deferred tax, because this is the thing that normally messes up any transactions. The deferred tax is iffy. So I asked, tell me about the deferred tax. And they did a calculation. They said, well, actually, the South African Revenue Service owes you money, so the deferred tax will be nothing. There'll be no deferred tax. So I had asked it because I didn't even know what it meant, but someone had given me that advice. Had I had my own legal team, they would have gone and looked for anything relating to deferred tax, and then they might have picked up that one word.
Very good lessons, Kim. Great lessons. Thank you for sharing that. I want to transition a little bit into life after exit. And I know that, some of the work that you're doing now is working with business owners who have sold their companies, and, they're kind of now in a phase of their life where they might have made some money and they've, lost the thing that they've spent their whole life working on, and there's like a gap or a void. Maybe you can share a little bit of details about that and why you've chosen to actually, spend time working on that particular project.
Absolutely. I exited. We took the family to Canada for 3 months and just became ski bums. At the time, my kids were 5 and 8. We went to a little place called Golden in British Columbia and just bummed around and did the most incredible backcountry skiing. And I was happy as a pig in shit. Then came back to South Africa. It's April and kids are back at school, husband's back at work, and it's like a Tuesday morning. My inbox is empty. No one's calling me. I'm like, what now? What do I do with my day? Okay, I'm going to go get fit. Okay, cool. So I'm like fit and healthy. But I felt a huge part of me was missing. And then I started socializing again with friends, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is Kim. She's the founder of Once." No, she's can't. Is she? She exited. I don't know. What are you doing next? I'm like, I don't know. And I realized I felt a little bit lost, a little bit rudderless, and it became clear that a big part of my identity was tied up in my business. And I loved working. I've always loved working. And so now who was I without this business, right? I'm like a mom and a wife, but I feel like I'm so much more. And so I did the uncomfortable thing of leaning into the thing that scared me the most, which is figuring out what is my purpose? Who am I without my business? All these tricky questions. And slowly but surely, I've started figuring that piece out. I actually even took a job. I worked at Airbnb for 18 months, which was awesome. Super cool to get into a global startup and see how they function and be part of a great team. But I knew working for someone else is not made for me. But that part of the journey that surprised me, I thought, okay, how many times have I said, when I've got time and money, I'm going to do this bucket list of things? Now I had time and money, and I felt so lost. And so I've made some investments. I've done I've started a smaller business, which gives me enough money to get by every month, and I don't have to be involved at all. And now I've started researching this phase post-exit, because there's so much literature on how to start a business, how to scale up a business, how to run a business, how to exit a business. But then post-exit is so little. And the more I speak to post-exited founders, the more I realize it wasn't unique only to me. And so I don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be, but I'm currently researching 100 post-exit founders. I've interviewed about 30 so far, and I'm just learning so much about this world post-exit. I hope to publish a piece of writing this year and really, obviously everything's anonymous, but really shine a light into that phase post-exit so that people know what to expect, and also maybe a framework on how to transition through that phase. Yeah. So I'm coaching it a little bit. Yeah.
No, I think that's incredible. And, I really hope that you and I can work a lot together in the future, because as exit strategy grows and we're getting more and more clients, there's going to inevitably be quite a few business owners that we successfully help sell their companies. And I'm going to send them directly to you to think about that step, because there's so much value that, business owners who've exited can add to the society, because they've got all the knowledge of, having built a company, which is a difficult thing to do. And they've got extra money, which they need to use responsibly, invest and, give back to the community. And so I'm very much looking forward to being a funnel for you for business owners that actually need that kind of support.
Yeah, I am so excited. And I've just hired a team again, and we've just started working on a new concept that really does exactly what you just said. And we're very much in the early stages, but I hope in a few months it'll be sort of more clear. And that is really to, post-exit founders have so much knowledge, heart, and as you mentioned, time and money. And it's hard to put yourself up there again sometimes. Some founders start a new business within 5 days, it's extraordinary. Others really take time to percolate. And so we'll touch base in a few months again, see where we land up. But certainly offering clarity and a sense of purpose to post-exit founders is something I'm super excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I can resonate with that. I mean, when I left, I didn't sell IX. I haven't sold IX yet, but I left operationally, which is a similar kind of exit, right? I'm just on the board and a shareholder. And so for the first 3 months after that, I was I was a little bit confused. I was like, what do I do now? And I like to build products and brands that can, that I wish I had. Our experience was the program I wish I had in university, and now exit strategy is the program I wish, or the service I wish I had when I was a founder. And so that's my passion, is really to get stuck into problems that I wish I had as a solution. And I feel like that's a nice kind of business to build, is something you wish you had. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing. It's like, I want to build something I really need.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, because there's actually the name I know, it's called Kavu. And I'm busy getting my pilot's license actually. And like Kavu is a flying term. So when you like punch through the, when you add around 10,000 feet, okay, a lot lower if it's me because I'm flying like tiny little airplane. You have clarity and you have visibility and velocity ultimate. It's called Kavu or Kavoke. And that is what I was missing after I had exited, was like clarity and vision and velocity, momentum. And so, yeah, that now the abbreviation is clarity, alignment, vision, velocity, and ultimate. So that really is something I'm excited to launch.
I love it. I love the name. It's got a lot of depth. It's got a lot of meaning. And yeah, Kim, thank you for sharing so much of your story and for really going into the depths of, your journey and your experience. And I found a lot of value. I learned things, about the process that I didn't know. And I really appreciate that about your story. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to introducing you to business owners and to working together, on this big project and seeing where it goes. So thank you so much for your time today. I think, we've gone over our 1 hour mark. This could probably go on for 2 hours, but I think we'll call it there. And, I think if anyone wants to get in touch with you, I'm sure they can just send you a message on LinkedIn, Kim Whitaker. I'll add it to the show notes. But yeah, I really appreciate the time today, Kim. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And yeah, really, LinkedIn's a great way to connect with me. And if you are a post-exit founder who is keen to share your story, or if you know anyone, I'd love to connect as well. I'm really building my research with post-exit founders around the world. So please do connect. And Aaron, all the best for this amazing podcast. Again, I wish I had had it, but for all my exits.
Thanks, Kim. Really great to see you. Okay, thank you, everyone, and thanks for tuning in today, and looking forward to connecting with everybody soon.